There are 7 verses in Psalm 11. The first 3 state a temptation that caused David to fear. There are 3 major movements as I see it. And I can break this psalm down into 3 sections. And so in the second section, in verses 4 through 6, the writer, David, will give you his reaction to this temptation to be afraid and to be concerned. And then in verse 7, finally, he's going to tell you the result. So there is a call to be afraid and to fear, to be tempted. There is this idea that David reacts a specific way towards that temptation, and then he'll settle in on the result. In the first 3 verses that I read, and this is why I wanted to read them solely so I could isolate them, there are 5 what I call key words in those 3 verses. The first one you'll find in verse 1, there are 2 in verse 1, refuge. It would be considered a secure or a safe place. The second one is the verb to flee. So if there's trouble and you see it coming, someone's giving David advice and they're telling, man, get out of town. It's time to go. Then in verse 2, this word wicked. This word is about an enemy who has the intentions of doing David harm, and they are out to destroy him. David calls, they're out to destroy the righteous. And then in verse 3, you find this word, foundations. And we want to have some kind of clarification about what the foundations are. Foundations are simply those things which society itself rests upon. And I'll show you in a moment that God gave Israel foundational things that they could live by. And these foundational things, they bring order. They bring order to society. So God gives them. And then finally, in verse 3, he calls them the righteous. And who are they? Are they the perfect people? I got news for you. No. I'll give you even greater revelation. There are no such thing as perfect people. You know that by now, right? Your spouse been trying to tell you. Listen. But in these verses, in verse 2, the wicked are busy doing things. And the writer says they do it in the darkness. They do it at night. They do it in secrecy. They do it and they hide their motives so that they can complete their treachery. But in verse 1, David makes this statement, in the Lord I take refuge. And then he asks that question, how can you say to my soul, flee like a bird to your mountain? How can you speak to me like that? And these are his counselors. These are the people that he gets advice from. So this is where I'm getting my sermon theme from. What can the righteous do? What can they do when they are in a state where they get bad advice? Or they get that advice that causes them to have a conflict with their own conscience. Or it causes a conflict at the root of their soul based on what they believe because of the terror or the possibility of something, a trauma happening that maybe perhaps I could avoid if I would just take the advice and run. David says, I can't really do that. He resists. You hear it in his words. How can you say to my soul, flee like a bird? How can you say that to me? He's resisting this advice and these counselors who say to him, listen, I know you got faith in God, but really, this is literal. This is not spiritual. There's a real enemy out here, and they're after you. Who does this relate to? If you got somebody speaking into your spirit like that, people or the enemy speaks to people who are technically faint of heart. You get those kind of advisors and those kind of counselors who know you and they'll say, really, I know in church you talk one way. But in the real world, in real life, Here's an opportunity where your faith can be defined. Will I take this advice and run? Or will I stand pat, refuse to quit? Because in everything, in all things, in any circumstance or situation, I'm going to trust in God. No matter what comes, I'm going to stand my ground and I'm going to trust God. Now, don't get it twisted now. Don't get it twisted. Some of his counselors knew David. You need to know this. The history is in David's life, there was a time when Saul pursued him, when Saul was king, and David was just a harp-playing boy singing songs. And somebody told Saul, listen, David is the next anointed king of Israel. And Saul said, oh, I don't think so. And Saul tried to kill him. He left the kingdom. He left the throne room. He ran to the mountains, and he lived, the scriptures tell us, in caves like an animal. He left. He left because he didn't want to do God's anointed any harm. It wasn't necessarily just fear. That made good sense because God's anointed was the king, even though the king was wrong. David had choices. I can either trust God or I can quit. I can look at the stress of the circumstance. I can look at the choices in front of me, and I can stand my ground or I can run. But if you look at verse 3, he makes a statement and then he asks a question. If the foundations are destroyed, that's the statement in my mind. So I have to give some kind of latitude, some kind of clarity about what foundations are. If you were to go back and you study the book of 1 Samuel, when God is building Israel and developing them beyond just 12 tribes and moving them into a nation, God gives Israel 4 foundational things that would ensure their success. 4 things. He gives them family. He tells them that family is important. Family is essential. Family is not just a man loving a woman, but it is a societal experience where the family can have security. It can grow. There is structure where God can be honored and worshiped inside of that family unit for generations to come. He gives them family. Listen to this carefully now. He gave them the conviction of work. I need you to know something. Work is not a curse. Some of y'all been cursing for years, talking about, man, I got to go. Got to get up. Tired of this job and all these people. Can't wait till I can retire. In fact, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm going to quit. And some of you don't quit many a job. Be with me today, Lord. But I just need you to know, work is technically not a curse. God gave Adam a job to do in the garden. And prior to his fall, Adam went to work every day doing his job and found peace and joy in the work that God gives. But God gave them work. The third foundational societal thing that God gave for their success was a form of government. He gave them laws. He gave them a structure with elders. Later on, they moved from a tribal elder society to that of a kingdom and a king and counselors, but God gave them government. The government's primary responsibility was to provide safety and security for families, so that families could work and earn a living and take care of themselves and their loved ones and their neighbors. And so the government had a duty to society to protect its people. I need help today. He gave them forth. He gave them a system of worship. He taught them how to approach him in worship. He taught them how to get the forgiveness of sins. In Israel, it was a sacrificial system where the blood of animals were spilled to pay for the debt of sin that the nation or individuals owed. God gave them family. God gave them work. God gave them government. He gave them worship. If you look with me in verse 2, the threat is very real for David. The wicked bend the bow. The wicked are making ready their arrows to the string. Coach, anybody here knows anything about bow hunting? You better check those strings before you go out. You better wax them down. You better test that bow before you go out to harvest an animal. He simply says they were making ready, but you know the intentions are bad because they're making ready at night. This is not the kind of meeting where you invite everybody to. Only a select few who are with you in this treachery. We get our stuff together at night so nobody will see us. We do it in secret. We're coming after him, and the threat is real. But in verse 3, you have not only the statement about the foundations, but a critical question that is applicable for David at his time. It's applicable for every generation after David, every generation of succeeding humanity. This question is applicable. So David makes the statement, if the foundations of family, work, government, and worship are destroyed, what can the righteous do? What happens in a society when everything starts to crumble? Even the God-given institutions begin to crumble. What happens when families fail? What happens in the church when the divorce rate is higher in the church than it is in secular society? What happens if there is no work and you can't find a job, but you got a wife and some babies at home and the rent is due and those children are hungry? You know, one of the things I like about the Crossroads, and I can't tell you guys how proud I am of this church and everyone who's banded together to participate in this Crossroad Kids Club ministry, is that one of the things the kids tell us when we come to the club, listen, can I have my snack? And I got a couple kids in my little small group, and it's the same every week. Can I have an extra snack, Pastor? And I look around to see if Miss Frankie is watching. And I'll sneak them some stuff. You know, you're only supposed to get one snack, but man, listen, we're going to violate the code today. What happens when children are hungry? When families can't provide for themselves? What do the righteous do when the government doesn't protect all of its people? What is happening if the righteous they're there, but no longer is there a standard of morality in society? You guys ought to really catch this one now. You ought to catch this because this is a common human experience. At one point in the nation of the life of Israel, there was a time in Judges chapter 17 and verse 6, where the writer simply says, every man did that which was right in his own eyes. That's how things were run. I'm going to do my thing. You're going to do your thing. But if you get over here and get in the middle of my thing, I'm going to deal with you. I'm not going to the police. It's me and you. Every man was doing the things that were right in his own eyes. So what do the righteous do if evil goes unchecked? If evil can run rampant and there is no authority, there is no foundational structure where evil can be curbed, what are the righteous going to do? What will the righteous do when God gives a system of worship? But even in society and the church, the authority of God's word is diminished and in some cases dismissed as irrelevant. Somebody just tell you, oh, some guys wrote this book. Why are you paying attention to that? I know better than that. What do you do when worship is just diminished down to entertainment? People show up to judge the praise team or judge the pastor and how well he speaks or how good the song's related to them, missing the point of the message of the song or the sermon, points people toward God and tells the story about who he is, what he's done, and yet to do. This is never about entertainment. What will you do when the God-given foundations of society fail? When families fail? When work doesn't exist? When government begins to implode and worship is neutralized? What will the righteous do? I want to show you something. You read it in your responsive reading. But I want to illustrate this concept, and I'm going to do it in a couple of ways. So I need you to walk with me in this and follow me. I chose the passage in Joshua chapter 20, verses 1 through 9, and technically only 7 through 9. But in Joshua 20, God gave Israel 6 cities. He called them cities of refuge. And in those cities, God set up a system so that if someone was caught up in a dilemma where they literally took someone's life, they killed someone, and it was not premeditated murder, we would call that today manslaughter, accidentally killed someone, they had a place to go. In that Old Testament context, you guys remember this, right? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. There was blood vengeance in those days. If you killed a family member of mine, they would come after you. They would get a couple relatives and hunt you down and terminate you. But God saw a need and created a structure called the cities of refuge. There were 6 of them scattered all around the country. I want you to catch this. It's an interesting thought that God would establish these cities of refuge. He protected those who innocently took life, but challenged the others to be disciplined for committing premeditated murder. Thou shalt not kill. And yet you can see something about God, you can see something about Christ, you can see something about salvation in these cities of refuge that God established. Here's one of the theological things that are significant. And when you guys hear me use that term, I don't use this term, loosely. The word theological in my mind is that which is true about God, that is always true about God, that will always be true about God. So the word of theology, the study of God, is about what's true about Him. And I'm trying to tell you something that I believe the scriptures are describing about Him. And when you take these cities of refuge and you apply them to the redemptive work of Christ, you can begin to see something about God that has always been true and always will be true when it comes to God and His love for humanity and how He deals with us. Man, I need help to do this today. Listen, when Jesus goes to Calvary's cross, He takes all of humanity's sins with Him. He takes all of humanity's sins, carries them to the cross, including the sins of those who crucified Him. You want to know how I know? It's considered an idea of being unintentional. They deliberately killed Him, but Jesus willingly gave His life. I need you to follow me. I can say it's unintentional, and the sins of even the sinners who crucified Him are forgiven at Calvary, because before He utters His last breath, He simply prays a prayer. Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Sometimes we are forgiven stuff that we don't even recognize that we are responsible for, but God knows enough to be able to nail all of our sins on the cross. All of them. They don't know. Historically, people have hated Jews for the death of Christ, and God went to Calvary for them. Historically, people have said, no, it wasn't the Jews' problem. It was the Roman people's problem. It was Pilate and his soldiers. And God would just simply say, I went to Calvary for them too. I went for every sinner everywhere throughout the history of humanity. Christ died. Died for all of us. These cities of refuge talk about the gift of salvation on multiple levels when you take a look at them. These cities are what we call a type of Christ. I want to show you something. When someone innocently killed someone, and they were taken they fled to the cities of refuge. And the elders at the gate, here's one thing, the gates always stayed open in these cities. There's 6 of them. The gates always stayed open. And the guy would come there and he'd stand at the gate and say, listen, I need help. And the elders would come out and they'd come to the gate. And they would flee to those cities, and they would escape there so they could escape the condemnation of the law, thou shalt not kill, and the blood avenger of the ones of the relationships of the ones who died and who pursued him. And he would say, I need help. Something happened. I'm guilty, but I didn't mean to do that. And if they felt his case was true, they would take him in. And they could escape the condemnation of the law, that thou shalt not kill, the wrath of God, and the eternal separation. And I want you to hear something. When it comes to the work of Christ, he puts everyone in a position to be freed from the guilt, the weight, and the depth of sin because of his redemptive work. And here's another thought. When I moved to Texas, my wife and I moved here probably, almost 50 years ago now, honey? 48, she says. I get straightened out all the time. Yeah, long enough. When I got here, I-45 was under construction. you got me, right? You've been working on I-45. That's a job you can retire from. But what you don't know is that the roads to these 6 cities were managed and maintained. These roads were kept up along the way, specifically by the entire nation, so that if someone got into a dilemma and needed to escape to a city of refuge, the roads were clear. The roads had signs. They were marked with little directions on, it's this way. Listen to me carefully. They did road renovation and construction in pre-first century so that people who needed to be saved could find a safe place to get to that was accessible to everyone who was guilty. You know something else? I want to highlight this a little bit differently. In the cities of refuge, they had a temporary nature. You stayed there in the city of refuge, and you didn't come out. But you could leave and leave safely where no one could harm you if the high priest who lived in that city died. Then everyone's guilt was expunged. And no one, not the relatives, not anybody who were waiting on you to sneak out, no one could touch you. Because God set it up that you stayed in that city until the reigning high priest passed away. And once that high priest died, all guilt was released. All responsibility was removed. You could leave then. I got news for you. When Jesus goes to the cross and dies, he pays the sin debt. And you know, like I do, the scriptures call him our great high priest. And when he goes to the cross and he dies as our high priest, he removes all the guilt hanging over our heads from our past, from our present, and even our future. And he sets us free. I want to show you. I want to show you you need to see how I'm coming up with this. So I'm going to take 4 of the 6 cities. I want you to look at them. There's 4 of them I want to highlight this morning. Kadesh. Kadesh means righteousness. Shechem means shoulder. Hebron means fellowship. And Bezer means fortress. When you define these words in their context, Kadesh offers sinners God's righteousness. That's exactly what happens with Jesus Christ. Every person who comes to him in faith receives the transferred righteousness of Jesus Christ. It's not because I deserved anything. It's not because you did anything. It's because God's made provision for you. You see, David knew these things, and that's why the value of studying the Word of God matters. David understood these things. He's the slayer of Goliath. He's the one who's guilty of even killing a friend of his. But he knew the grace and the mercy of God when the people of God stand before God and say, Lord, I'm guilty. I'm guilty. Forgive me, God. I know I'm guilty. He's that guy. The word Shechem means to shoulder. It's the idea of carrying someone like a shepherd shoulders a sheep on his shoulders. He would carry that wayward lamb, pick him up, put him on his shoulders, take him back to the flock, and keep him there and watch over them at night. Hebrew simply means God offers sinners fellowship with him. We have fellowship one with another, and I enjoy the time I have spending with everyone in this community of faith. But I need you to know I spend time with God and him with me, and I'm experiencing him. And it's different. It's different. This is not religion. This is a relationship that's been made available through the blood of Christ. Bezer simply means fortress. Christ provides to the security of a fortress, and the security of the fortress is himself. It's us in him and him in us, the hope of glory. He's in my life. What will the righteous do if the foundations are destroyed? What can the righteous do if the foundations are crumbling around us? What can one person do when government begins to fail? What can one person do when another one doesn't love him anymore? What can one person do when jobs get scarce and you've been place after place after place? I wouldn't know what it is to go out and apply for a job these days. It used to be you can walk up to a job and present yourself. Now you get online and you put stuff online. They look at it and they don't even have to throw it away. They just hit delete. What do you do if it becomes hard to find work? Let me tell you what you ought not do, what you must not do. Don't run. Don't run. Now, I don't care what the counselors say. Don't take off calling yourself being on vacation and you know what you're doing. You're running. Don't run to the mountains. Don't hide. Don't quit. Don't give up. Don't allow excuses to take the place of the responsibility to have the faith of a mustard seed that Jesus said could move mountains. Don't quit. I know you ought not do that. Don't quit. Look at verses 4 through 6 with me. I'm getting out of this. I told you I ain't had but a few pages here. I'm getting out. Verses 4 through 6. The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of men. The Lord tests the righteous and the wicked, and the one who loves violence his soul hates. Upon the wicked he will rain snares, fire and brimstone and burning wind will be the portion of their cup. I need to know if you see this in verse 4. He makes this statement, the Lord is in his temple. And I want you to slow down and look at it differently. I want you to isolate the Lord, separated from his holy temple, and take a look at these two words between them. Is in. The writer says, is in. If you'll expand your vision, the Lord is in, he says in the temple, let me put it in my own words. The Lord is in his office. Listen to me carefully. We've been talking about 4 foundations. The Lord is in his temple. He's in his office. I got news for you. He's at work. He don't go to sleep. He don't get tired. He don't have to get hungry. And he don't stop to eat lunch. None of these other people distract him because he's got a call from here, a call from there, a call from over here. God, in his omniscience, hears everything, sees everything, knows everything, doesn't get tired. He can be there for you. He can be there for me. He'll be there for all of us. He's in his office. He's at work. He's at work. He don't get tired. No, he's in his place of business. Boy, I wish some of us would catch that. He's got work to do. David looks to the Lord, and it's him that he gets the moral standard from. He gets it from him. David, the writer, says, listen, look up. He's in heaven. He's still on the throne. He's still in control. He's ruling. He's governing. He's watching. He's testing. He's trying. God is still in charge. And God will test the righteous and the wicked. You see, sometimes we've been in church so long, we feel like we got it. I made it. That's when you catch a test. Next thing you know, you'll be down here on the front. How is it that folk don't like to sit on the front pew? You don't know how many times I'm tempted. I'm tempted to just say, everybody come down front. Let me get everybody right here. And then I'll come stand right there real close so I can yell loud right there. No. Listen, he talks about God being in heaven, God being on his throne, his eyelids being open, God seeing the righteous and the wicked, testing the righteous and the wicked, so that when trouble comes our way, don't run. Ask him, God, what do you want to do with me? What do you want to do with me? You see, if there's 4 foundational institutions that God has given, maybe God wants me to go to work in some area. Maybe I need to go to work in my family. Instead of pointing the blame at somebody else, Lord, change me. Change my attitude. Change my disposition. Let me be more patient. Let me be kind. Let me be long-suffering and not hold one mark or one issue against another. I've been doing this for a long time, Lord. I've been good a long time. She messing up. No. Let me be the man, Lord, that you are calling me to be. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm not hiding. I'm not running. Maybe I got to get up and go to work, yeah. But you know what, God? Whatever that job is, you gave it to me. I can tell you today there was a job, Ken, I think I've shared this with you guys years ago. I went to work for the Houston Independent School District, and I took over $8 an hour pay cut. And I was asking myself, what in the world am I doing? I got a job, I can't pay the note. I'm talking about the house note, not no car note. I got a job that I'm struggling to feed my 3 little children. Lord, what am I doing on this job? It doesn't make sense. But I just stood still. I went every day. In fact, some of you guys know I hate to be late. If none of you know it, my wife knows it. I hate to be late. And I went to work at 45 minutes to an hour early for years, showing up. Just doing the right thing, doing what God called me to do, being the person God called me to be. And I want to tell you guys something. It took a little while, but I ended up running the whole division. God took me from the lowest possible position to the highest position in that district. You don't know what God wants to do until you lay your life down in his hands. And Coach taught me this years ago. Some of you guys ought to spend some time with Coach. Raise your hand, Coach. There he is. He taught me, he said, Pastor, listen, living by faith, that's the standard. And I watched him and his wife live by faith. Not worrying about what they have or don't have, but trusting God for what they needed. And God provided every step of the way. And watching him built my faith. It helped me to grow. Sometimes God will test his people. He will examine them. That's what the word simply means. It means to examine the righteous. He'll test the righteous. He will examine to see the substance and the fiber of your faith. And David said, I'm not going nowhere. Now, I used to go up to the mountains, but, I'm not going that way anymore. Take a look at verse 7, and let me get out of this. He says simply, for the Lord is righteous. He loves righteousness. The upright, they'll behold his face. So David tells him in verse 6, and he tells him, I want you to look up. God is still on the throne. He's in his office. He's doing his business. He's technically the one responsible for families. He gave them. He's the one responsible for work. He gave it to us. He's the one responsible for government. He's the one who directed us to get into that. He's the one who gave us worship and taught us how, when, and how to worship him. This becomes his responsibility if we'll follow him. And so here's what David says in culmination to this thought. What can the righteous do? The righteous can know for a fact that one day, he goes and he looks to the future. One day, we are going to see God face to face. One day. And so he's asking you to take your eyes off yourself and your present circumstances. Look up to him. And when you look to the hills now, don't think about fleeing and running away and hiding, but look unto the hills because that's where your help comes from. Look up and see that God is still in the business of caring for people, and he is there. And one day in the future, you will see him for yourself, face to face. That's the hope. That's the hope. Let me share this thought with you. In 1 John chapter 3 and verse 2, I kind of skipped over a passage earlier, but in 1 John 3:2, you find these words again. Beloved, right now we are the children of God. It does not yet appear in what we will be, but we know that when he appears, we will be like him, because we will see him just as he is. You were made in the image of God. You bear the image of God in your body. One day when you see him, you will be transformed. You will be changed. And you see him as he is, and then you will change into who you are. One day, the cities of refuge talk about the balance between accountability and compassion. The value of mercy in applying justice. Because that's who God is. That's how he works with humanity. Too often we get so spiritual, we become so critical, try to make people holy. It doesn't work. All you do is drive them away. You drive them away. So what can the righteous do when the families fail? When work is slow? When the governments do not protect all of its people or care for all of its citizens? What can the righteous do when worship becomes neutral or secondary? I have to know that God is still my refuge. He's my secure place. I have to know that. The righteous need to know, they have to know that they can trust God no matter what circumstances you're in. You have to know that you can trust God. You have to know that God doesn't take vacations. God doesn't blink. God doesn't turn his head. He doesn't turn away. He is still employed in the business of caring for his creation. And David could say what was happening around him literally is only now and temporary. But I have an eternal perspective. I'm looking toward the future because God is in charge. And he knows my name. He knows my name. He knows my circumstances. He is aware of my situation. He knows my name. You have to know these things intuitively. You got to have it in your spirit and in your mind because this world is broken. And no matter what, God is still in charge. And you know what the righteous must do? They must never be passive in a declining society. Christians can't afford to be neutral in a society that is crumbling. You have to be on fire for God. You have to know the truth of God. You have to know it and live it, especially in hard times. You can't be passive. You can't do it. The challenge in Psalms 11 is to be influential, be relevant in your circumstances. Be influential and relevant in your circumstances. Jesus put it like this: you are the salt of the world. You are the light of the world. Live out that challenge. Put some flavor in your family. Put some seasoning in your job. Sprinkle some salt on the government. Oh, I need you. Man, please. Don't be afraid. Call them up and tell them y'all need some seasoning. Be a light in the darkness. Let your light shine. Don't hide. Don't run. Don't cower down. Don't back up. Don't quit. Don't Don't let go. And if you didn't have anything else to do, each of us were called to be ambassadors of Christ, to be a witness for Jesus Christ, to be disciples of Jesus Christ. Keep growing, keep learning, keep moving forward. What are the righteous to do when the foundations are destroyed? Build them back. Go to your family first and build it back up. If you need some help, I'm right here. There are others right here. Miosha Geis is right there. Experts in family matters. There are people all around this church who are experts in a variety of areas. Great people, godly people, people of faith, people who've been through the fire. Don't get isolated by yourself. Don't even trust your own mind if your mind is telling you, quit. Call yourself a liar. Don't believe that. Don't quit. Don't give up.